Hi, Stephen from Own or Disown. Well, welcome to another episode of Newegg Now, and I've been waiting for this laptop for a long time. It's the MSI Alpha 15 now. It's got the Ryzen 7 4800H and the AMD RX5600m. Now, you may recall, I did review this last year, I think it was. It was the 3750H and the 5500M. And that CPU definitely bottlenecked that GPU. I mean, it was performing less than the 1660 Ti Max Q. So that was a big downside of that CPU. Anyway, the 4800H should be a lot better. And I'm actually going to be comparing it against like the Helios 300 in some of the games, and also the Electronics RP17. Now, of course, they've got 2060s, and it should be pretty close to this 5600M. So let's have a look inside. Now, MSI do a good job of packing all this up. Of course, they put a bag within a bag. So it looks just the same as last year's. And of course, we get the usual setup guide and stuff like that. And of course, we get the power brick. It comes with I know it comes with a 230 watt power brick, so I won't bother getting that out. Now, the Phoenix emblem here on top, I'm sure mine peeled off last time, so actually they've corrected it. That doesn't look as though it's going to come off, which is good. But basically it looks the same as last time. It's not exactly thin, but it's black in colour. Got the two air vents out here. You got another one here. So actually, this is if I remember, the CPU side here. So you have two vents for the CPU, and actually only one here for the GPU. And you do have some good cooling here underneath. Some good air intakes, so that is good. And you've got a big feet here at the back, which is always good. And of course, you've got little alien sort of symbols on here to give it a gamer look. Now, if I recall, yep, there's a factory seal here at the top here. So I'll ask Newegg if I can remove that factory seal so I can go inside and take a look for you. Now, it does has two M.2 slots in here, which they can use either SATA or PCI Express. At the moment, I've got a 1 terabyte in, and it is 16 gigabytes running in dual channel. Has a Wi-Fi 6 card, and I think it's a 62 watt hour battery, something like that, inside. Now, here you do have the speakers here. They're supposed to be giant speakers. I think they've updated them this time, because last time they were a little bit tinny, I remember. So, yeah, inside it looks exactly the same as last time with a Steel Series keyboard. So, let's go and do some thermal tests and some CPU and gaming tests. So, looking at Cinebench R20, looking at performance mode, we scored a multi-thread score of 4,227 points. Now, that is pretty good. That is just behind like my i9. That's actually 11% faster than the balance mode. So certainly, for multi-threaded workloads, it does appear that the difference in the power modes does help you there. Now, single-threaded performance, pretty much the same across the board, though. And looking at Cinebench R23, it's got a nice score, 10,785 points in the multi-core and 1,240 on the single-thread score. So that puts it, certainly above the i7 10875H from Intel. So it's definitely worth having. But certainly comparing it to the latest 5900HS, even in the 13-inch Flow X13, it does get beat there. And in comparison to another 15-inch with that same CPU, it is quite far behind. So certainly we're looking forward to an update on the Alpha 15. So here's Far Cry New Dawn. Ultra settings using balance mode and auto fan. So we're getting about 83, 84 FPS. The GPU utilization is around about 78, 80%. So not quite as high as I would like it. But the temperature of the GPU is 64 degrees, whilst the temperature of the CPU is up there in about 90 degrees. Now, I have seen it even spike up to around about 97 even. So it does get a little bit toasty. The watts, the 4800H is around about 35 watts, and the 5600M about 53 watts there. So let's just crank up the max fan and see what effect that does. So now with the max fan, the CPU is at around about 85 degrees. So it has definitely brought it down a tad, so that's good. and also the GPU is now 61 degrees, so that's about 3 degrees cooler. So that's a good job. So let's switch it to extreme performance mode with the max fan. So now with extreme performance mode, max fan, first thing you'll notice that on the right hand side the GPU is now at about 59 watts, 58, 59 watts, so that's higher than before, and you can see that the boost clock is also slightly higher. So although you can't really see the benefit in this game, I suspect you would see some improvement in frame rate in other games. The temperatures are very similar to before, so it's definitely worthwhile having. They're looking at about 85, 86 degrees on the CPU and 61 degrees on the 5600M. So in Far Cry New Dawn, I compared against the Helios 300 in auto mode and the Electronics RP17 in just game mode, not beast modes, because those two modes would have been, turbo mode and beast mode are basically overclock type mode. So looking at that, we've got the MSI Alpha in red, and the RP17 in yellow, and the Helios 300 in blue. Now certainly like we saw last year, the Intel CPUs certainly do better compared to the 4000 series CPUs for gaming. They do actually hold it back a little bit, but it is good to see that the 5600M certainly held its own, if not slightly better than the 2060 in the RP17 here. In Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the X12 1920 by 1080, of course. We're looking at the red bars for being the MSI Alpha 15, and again it's holding its own compared to the RP17 with the 2060, and the Helios 300 with the i7 is slightly faster. So Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I just wanted to throw in here the Asus Zephyrus G15, which I just reviewed. Now, this, of course, it's unfair, isn't it? But it's a 5900 HS and the 3070, so one would think it's going to get owned. But in reality, it's only 25% difference. So that's just not a huge difference, really. And you look at the Zephyrus G15, that costs, $1,700, $1,800, while the Alpha costing about $1,000. So big difference, 25%. I'll let you decide there. So in Firestrike, we've got the GPU score in red and the CPU score in yellow. And we've got the Helios 300 at the bottom and the Alpha 15 up at the top. And there's actually, there's actually not that much difference in the GPU score between the two, which is interesting. So it's very close to the RTX 2060. And of course, the 8-core 4800H is, much better in terms of multi-threaded performance compared to the i7 10750H. So in Time Spy, I'm comparing here max performance mode using the max fan at the top and auto fan at the bottom. Now the max fan does give you a slight performance boost there, as you can see, 9,368 over 9,200. Also, if you're looking at the temperatures, auto fan, we're looking at CPU temperatures of 98 degrees, but have the max fan, that's down to 92, so we shave off 6 degrees, and the GPU and auto fan was 74, whilst with max fan 65. So the fan speed there does do a good job. So same as last year, exactly the same type of layout. Aluminium keyboard deck, Windows Precision touchpad with separate mouse buttons, which are quite clicky, but they work pretty decently. The keyboard lighting is one of the standout features, of course. It's a SteelSeries keyboard, and very bright, and it's per key RGB, so you can switch that in the software as well as create macros. At the top here, you do have 3 buttons. The power button, of course. The middle button on the last year's model would used to be able to change the patterns on the SteelSeries keyboard. Now it's reserved for opening up the Dragon Center software. And next to that, we've got the Cooler Boost Max Fan option there. Now we do have a separate number pad, which of course is great. The volume buttons and things are located as usual, and the brightness keys are located on the arrow keys, which is typical for MSI. And up at the top on the F row keys, you've got, like on the F7, you have the ability to switch power modes and eco mode on the F5 button. But all in all, it's a nice keyboard. So it's exactly the same chassis as last year. So yeah, hence it's just as thick as it was last year. 29mm thick. You do have separate audio jacks, USB Type-C 3.2 Gen 1, and also a USB Type-A 3.2 Gen 1, a mini display port. You also have HDMI 2.0, good for 4K at 60 Hz, Ethernet jack, and the air vent and Kensington lock. On the right, Yeah, at the front we have 2 more USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A ports. Now, of course, like before, I always said they should be here, particularly when there's no vent here. And of course, you do have the power cable that goes in the way. Now, fortunately, there's an L-shaped power connector, so your cable can get out of the way, but I'd rather these were here, particularly as there's no vent here, of course. And you do have an SD card reader, which accepts a card most of the way in. So its weight, 5 pounds 3 ounces, a bit heavier than last year. That was 5 pounds 1 ounce. And with a 230 watt power brick, it's a travel weight of 7 pounds 2 ounces versus 6 pounds 11 ounces last year. So, yeah, a little bit heavier. So here I want to compare the panel against that on the Omen 15T, which has a 95% of sRGB coverage. Once we're looking here on the Alpha 15, only 61%, so it's a little bit low. And of course, it's not very bright either. 253 nits versus about 330 nits on the Omen. But, you know, the last Alpha 15 was also not very bright. It was a little bit brighter, but its contrast was very poor last time. At least the contrast this time is 950 to 1. So looking at the two, yeah, you can see it's a little bit dimmer, and I do prefer the Omen panel. Well, what do I think of it so far? Well, you know, it's exactly the same as last year in terms of the chassis. You know, some may think that's a good thing. It's certainly starting to look a little bit dated now, I think, because everything's starting to get slimmed down. But of course, it's the budget end, but at least you do get a 144 Hz panel. I mean, there is a 120 Hz panel option, but this has 144 Hz. Now, unfortunately, you know, the ghosting test, it does seem to have ghosted a little bit more compared to a competing 144 Hz panel, which is a shame. But thermals, you know, a little bit hot on auto fan. You certainly think you're going to have to run the max fan, and last year it was about 52 decibels was the max fan. Gaming might not be too bad, perhaps. It depends on the game, but if you certainly load the CPU and the GPU, you're going to need that max fan going there. If I get a good reception on this video, you know, I will. I'll probably do a lot of gaming tests primarily. So, anyway, thanks for watching. Bye now.